The Invisible Man. The world is a very cold place when you are invisible. That was the first thing Arthur learned when he lost his apartment, then his car, and finally, his dignity. He learned that you don't actually disappear. People just stop seeing you. They look through you. They look over you. They look at their phones, the sky, the traffic. Anything to avoid looking into your eyes. It was a Tuesday in November. The kind of day where the wind feels like broken glass against your skin. Arthur was sitting in his usual spot, nestled in the narrow alleyway between a bakery and an old bookstore. The bakery vent blew warm air that smelled of yeast and sugar. It was the only luxury Arthur had left. He pulled his thin, gray coat tighter around his chest. His stomach rumbled, a deep, painful sound that he had grown used to. He hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days. He had a few coins in a paper cup in front of him, but not enough for a sandwich yet. Arthur closed his eyes, trying to sleep, trying to forget the cold. Then he heard it. It wasn't a roar or a shout. It was a tiny, pathetic sound. A whimper. Arthur opened one eye. The alley was empty. He closed his eye again. Whimper. It came again, louder this time. Arthur groaned and shifted his weight. He looked toward the dumpster at the end of the alley. Something was moving behind a stack of wet cardboard boxes. "Go away," Arthur croaked, his voice rough from disuse. "I don't have any food." The pile of cardboard shifted again. A small wet nose poked out. Then 2 terrified brown eyes. It was a dog. Or at least, it looked like a dog. It was a mess of matted, muddy fur. It was shaking so violently that its teeth were chattering. It looked at Arthur not with aggression, but with pure, desperate hope. Arthur sighed. He looked at the few coins in his cup. Then he looked at the shivering animal. "You picked the wrong human, little guy," Arthur muttered. "I can't even take care of myself." The dog stepped out from the boxes. He limped slightly. He was skinny, ribs showing through the mud. He walked slowly toward Arthur and collapsed 3 feet away, letting out a long, heavy sigh. Arthur stared at the dog. The dog stared at Arthur. For the first time in months, someone was looking at him, not through him, at him. Arthur reached into his pocket and pulled out half of a stale cracker he had been saving for dinner. He tossed it gently toward the dog. The dog didn't eat it immediately. He sniffed it, looked at Arthur to ask for permission, and then swallowed it in one bite. "That's it," Arthur said. "That's all I have." The dog crawled closer. He didn't ask for more food. Instead, he pressed his cold, wet body against Arthur's leg. He rested his heavy head on Arthur's knee and closed his eyes. Arthur froze. He hadn't touched another living being in a year. Slowly, his trembling hand reached down. He rested it on the dog's head. The dog stopped shaking. And for the first time in a long time, the cold didn't feel quite so bad. 2 against the world. They named themselves silently. Arthur called the dog Buddy, because that was what he was. Buddy didn't seem to mind. Life on the streets is hard, but life on the streets with a dog is complicated. Some people smiled when they saw them. A homeless man is a nuisance, but a homeless man with a dog is a tragedy. People were more likely to drop $1 in the cup. They would say, "Buy something for the dog." Arthur always did. He bought dog food before he bought bread. He bought water for Buddy before he bought coffee for himself. "You're eating better than I am," Arthur joked one evening, watching Buddy devour a chicken stew while Arthur chewed on a dry crust of pizza. Buddy wagged his tail, thumping it against the concrete. But having Buddy also meant new challenges. Arthur couldn't go into the public library to warm up anymore. Dogs weren't allowed. He couldn't sleep in the subway station. The guards would chase him out. They had to find new places. They found a dry spot under a highway overpass. It was noisy, but it was dry. One night, a bitter storm rolled in. The rain was freezing rain, turning the streets into sheets of ice. Arthur huddled in the corner, wrapping his thin blanket around Buddy. He was shivering uncontrollably. The cold was sinking into his bones, the kind of cold that makes you feel like you'll never be warm again. "I'm sorry, Buddy," Arthur chattered. "I'm so sorry." Buddy wiggled out from under the blanket. Arthur thought the dog was leaving to find a better shelter, a warmer place. But Buddy didn't leave. He climbed on top of Arthur. He laid his warm, heavy body directly across Arthur's chest. He curled around Arthur's neck like a living scarf. The heat from the dog radiated into Arthur's chest, warming his heart, slowing his shivering. Buddy licked Arthur's frozen cheek. Arthur cried that night, not out of sadness, but out of gratitude. He realized something important. He had saved Buddy from the alley, but Buddy was saving him every single day. They developed a routine. In the mornings, they walked the park. Arthur would wash his face in the public fountain, and Buddy would chase pigeons, never catching them, just for fun of it. Arthur started talking again. He talked to Buddy constantly. He told him about his old life. "I used to be a carpenter, you know," Arthur told him one sunny morning, sitting on a park bench. "I built houses, beautiful houses with big porches. I had a wife, too, Martha. She passed away 3 years ago. That's when the wheels fell off." Buddy listened intently, his head cocked to the side, his ears perked up. He was the best listener Arthur had ever met. People in the park started to recognize them. The old man and his dog. They weren't invisible anymore. They were a fixture, a local curiosity. But curiosity doesn't pay the rent, and winter was getting deeper. The incident in the park. It was a Tuesday again, exactly 2 months since they had met. The park was busy. It was an unusually sunny afternoon for January, and families were out enjoying the rare warmth. Arthur sat on his usual bench, whittling a small piece of wood with a pocket knife he had found. Buddy was sleeping at his feet. Suddenly, Buddy's head snapped up. A low growl started in his throat. "Quiet, Buddy," Arthur whispered. "Don't cause trouble." But Buddy ignored him. He stood up, the hair on his back standing straight up. He barked, a sharp, urgent sound, and pulled at the rope Arthur used as a leash. "What is it?" Arthur asked, looking around. Buddy barked again and pulled harder. He was looking toward the edge of the park, near the duck pond. The pond was partially frozen, a dangerous mix of ice and slush. Arthur stood up, his joints popping. He followed Buddy's gaze. At first, he saw nothing. Then, he saw a flash of pink. A tiny little girl, no older than 4, was toddling down the slope toward the water. She was chasing a large white duck. The duck was waddling onto the thin ice. The girl was following. There were no parents nearby. The park was loud, full of laughing teenagers and traffic noise. No one noticed the little girl. "Hey!" Arthur shouted, but his voice was weak. The girl stepped onto the mud, then 1 foot onto the ice. Buddy didn't wait. He ripped the rope from Arthur's weak grip. He bolted across the grass, a streak of brown fur. "Buddy, no!" Arthur screamed, running as fast as his old legs could carry him. The little girl took another step. The ice cracked. She slipped, falling forward. Splash! She went into the freezing water up to her waist. She screamed, a terrified, high-pitched shriek. Buddy didn't hesitate. He jumped into the freezing slush. He didn't bite her. He grabbed the back of her thick winter coat with his teeth. He planted his paws in the mud on the bank and pulled. He growled, digging his claws into the earth, tugging with all his might. The girl was crying, thrashing around. Buddy held on. Arthur arrived seconds later. He didn't care about his shoes or the cold. He splashed into the mud, grabbed the girl's arm, and hauled her up onto the grass. Buddy scrambled out after them, shaking water everywhere. The girl was safe. She was wet, cold, and terrified, but she was safe. It's okay. Arthur panted, patting her back. "You're okay." Suddenly, a woman came running over the hill. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with terror. Emily! She saw the scene, a dirty homeless man, a wet muddy dog, and her crying daughter. Most people would have screamed. Most people would have snatched the child and run away. Most people would have assumed the worst. But the woman stopped. She saw Arthur shivering, kneeling in the mud. She saw Buddy, sitting protectively next to the girl, licking her hand to comfort her. She fell to her knees and hugged her daughter. "Oh my God, Emily." I turned around for 1 second. She looked up at Arthur. Tears were streaming down her face. Did you save her?" Arthur shook his head. He pointed to the dog. He did, ma'am. He heard her before I saw her. He pulled her out. The woman looked at Buddy. Buddy wagged his tail and sneezed. She looked back at Arthur. She looked him in the eyes. Really looked at him. She saw the kindness, the fear, and the exhaustion. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." A warm meal. The woman's name was Sarah. She insisted, absolutely insisted, that Arthur and Buddy come with her. "I can't, ma'am," Arthur said, looking down at his dirty clothes. "I'll get your car dirty." "I don't care about the car," Sarah said firmly. "You are freezing, and you just saved my daughter's life. Get in." She drove them to a small, warm cafe nearby. She tied Buddy outside, but ordered a large bowl of warm beef and rice specifically for him. For Arthur, she ordered soup, a sandwich, coffee, and a slice of apple pie. It was the best meal Arthur had eaten in 3 years. As Arthur ate, Sarah watched him. She was calm now, holding Emily, who was wrapped in a dry blanket. "You have a way with animals," Sarah said. Arthur wiped his mouth with a napkin. "Buddy is special. We look out for each other." "Where do you live?" she asked gently. Arthur hesitated. "Here and there, under the bridge mostly." Sarah frowned. She looked at Emily, then at Arthur. "You said you used to be a carpenter?" Arthur nodded. "A long time ago, before the arthritis got bad. Before everything." Sarah tapped her fingers on the table. She seemed to be making a calculation in her head. "My father," she began, "lives on a large property about 20 miles out of the city. It used to be a farm. He's getting older, and he can't manage the grounds anymore. The fences are breaking, the barn needs repairs, and the garden is a mess." Arthur listened, holding his warm coffee cup with both hands. "He's stubborn," Sarah smiled slightly. "He refuses to go to a nursing home. He wants to stay in his house. But he needs someone around. Not a nurse, but a caretaker. Someone to fix the fences. Someone to keep an eye on things. Someone to keep him company." She looked out the window at Buddy, who was happily eating his beef and rice. "He loves dogs," she added. Arthur's heart started to beat faster. "Ma'am, I don't have references. I don't have an address. I look like this." "I saw what you did today," Sarah said. "You ran toward danger to save a child that wasn't yours. You raised a dog that is gentle and brave. Those are the only references I need." She wrote a phone number and an address on a napkin. "I'll take you there today. We have a small guest cottage on the property. It has a shower, a bed, and a kitchen. It's yours if you want to try it out for a week. If my dad likes you, you stay. We pay a fair wage." Arthur looked at the napkin. His hands were shaking again, but not from the cold. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you do this for a beggar?" Sarah reached across the table and touched his hand. "Because today, you weren't a beggar. You were a hero, and heroes deserve a home." The transformation, the transition wasn't instant, but it was real. The guest cottage was small, but to Arthur, it was a palace. It had a hot shower. He stood under the water for 45 minutes, scrubbing away the grime of the city. He shaved his beard, revealing a face he hadn't seen in years. Older, yes, but kind. Buddy loved the farm. He had acres of green grass to run in. No more concrete. No more broken glass. He chased squirrels and rolled in the dirt. Sarah's father, a grumpy old man named Mr. Henderson, was skeptical at first. He looked at Arthur with suspicion. "You know how to fix a porch step?" Mr. Henderson grumbled on the first day. "Yes, sir," Arthur said. "I can fix it with my eyes closed." And he did. He fixed the porch. Then he fixed the barn door. Then he repaired the fence. But the real magic happened with Buddy. Mr. Henderson sat on his porch every afternoon. One day, Buddy trotted up the stairs and sat next to the old man's rocking chair. Mr. Henderson looked down. "Well, what do you want, Mutt?" Buddy just rested his head on the old man's slipper. Slowly, Mr. Henderson's hand lowered. He scratched Buddy behind the ears. "Good boy," the old man whispered. Arthur watched in the garden, smiling. A real family. 6 months passed. It was summer now. The farm looked beautiful. The grass was cut, the fences were white and clean, and flowers were blooming in the garden. Arthur was no longer thin and gray. He had gained weight. His skin was tan from working in the sun. He walked with a purpose. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was Arthur, the caretaker. On a warm Saturday evening, Sarah and Emily came to visit for a barbecue. They sat at a large wooden table in the backyard, a table Arthur had built himself from reclaimed wood in the barn. There was food everywhere. Corn on the cob, grilled chicken, potato salad. "Arthur, sit down," Sarah called out. "I'm just checking the grill," Arthur said. "Sit," Mr. Henderson commanded, though his voice was warm. "You're part of the family, not the waiter." Arthur sat down. He looked around the table. He saw Emily playing the grass with Buddy. The dog looked healthy, his coat shiny and thick. He was barking happily. He saw Mr. Henderson laughing at something Sarah said. He saw Sarah smiling at him with gratitude. Arthur looked down at his plate. He remembered the cold alleyway. He remembered the taste of the stale cracker. He remembered the loneliness that felt like it would kill him. He looked at Buddy. The dog stopped playing for a second and looked back at Arthur. Buddy gave a little bark, his tail wagging furiously as if to say, "We did it." They had saved each other. Arthur took a bite of his food. It tasted like home. He realized that the title of his life had changed. He wasn't the beggar. He wasn't a homeless man. He was Arthur. He was a friend. He was a protector. He had found a dog abandoned in the trash. And in doing so, he had found the one thing he thought he had lost forever. He found a family.